It's July 30th, 2016. Hello and welcome. My name is Brian McAvoy.
And I'm Tim Shank. This is episode 5 of Two Cyborgs and a Microphone, brought to you by Twin Cities Plus, creating an intelligent, capable, and resilient community.
Wearables. Most of our listeners probably wear them, but what do they mean to transhumans? We're going to focus on wearables that have electronics since that is currently cutting edge. Now, I've had an e-paper watch, 3 fitness trackers, 2 different color touchscreen watches, one of which I just converted to a pocket watch on a whim. What's your experience, Tim?
Well, Brian, I'm new to the wearable scene. The only wearable I've ever used is a Pebble smartwatch.
Now, people have put their smartphones on holders that mount on their waist and stuff. Would you consider that wearable?
I guess so. I think there's a lot of gray area as far as what is wearable.
I would define a wearable as something that needs to be on your body to function properly. For example, the Samsung watch I'm wearing right now, it needs to detect a certain angle to turn itself on, or it would run the screen all the time and that would just destroy the battery.
Now, my Pebble, it operates the same whether it's on my wrist or not. That, I think, is outside of your criteria of it needing to be worn on the body to function correctly. I think phones are the same. Phones will function entirely regardless of where they are located, so long as they have a battery that's charged.
So maybe my criteria for a wearable should be something that is meant to be worn or only functions when worn. Because I guess some phones use the accelerometer inside to act as a pedometer, and that's typically something that has to be worn in order to work.
Then it kind of comes down to the function of the device rather than the actual hardware and what you're doing with it. Because if I were to disable my accelerometer, my phone would still function. If you were to set your watch to always have the screen on, does that make it not wearable anymore?
I don't know. I would still think it would be wearable on account of it's got a watch band that straps to my wrist, whereas a phone can be placed anywhere and it still operates. I've got a tablet computer on a magnet mount that's stuck to my fridge. I could have that in my pocket. It's only a 7-inch and I've got large pockets. I wouldn't consider that a wearable.
It sounds like wearable is something that is affixed to the body. Is that where we're going?
Let's go with that. Google Glass, all the head-mounted sets and stuff, those are all require that you be wearing them. Whereas a phone, I guess, is handled. It's not worn while it's in use.
Fair enough. Of all the pieces of technology of wearable technology that you've used, what would you say the benefit to having a wearable is?
The benefit to having a wearable is that it's right there. It's meant to be very easy to interface with. My watch, I can see my messages just by turning my wrist. Normally you'd have to take out a phone, which is not that much trouble, but it's so much easier to just glance at my wrist. Plus, it's a lot more inconspicuous. How about you? You've got a Pebble watch with an e-display.
Yeah, it's a Pebble Steel, and I chose the Pebble Steel because of the long battery life. It doesn't have a touch screen. It doesn't have LED, so it can last a week on a charge. And to me, that's important. I don't want the screen that comes on when it's in a certain position. I want it to function like a watch and always be there visible. So I think next time I'm going to go with the Gear S watch, which hopefully will be soon.
Now, I started with an e-paper watch as well, and that I think had like a 4-day battery life. And I really liked that watch. It was big, it was clunky. I got it in a very obnoxious color because I figured if I'm going to have something gigantic on my wrist, I might as well just play it up and make it really obvious, downright gaudy. But I did like the long battery life on that. And then, of course, I upgraded to something with more function, which is the watch I've got now. I can check my heart rate with it. It's got a pedometer in it, and all those active features, like a color touchscreen and stuff, are in there. And I really like having them. I'm glad I upgraded.
Let's talk about some kind of outside. Smartwatches are one thing, but there's a number of different wearable technologies out there that are exceptional, that aren't quite in the public's view yet. And what I'm looking at is the Ritmo Pregnancy Audio Belt. And what this is, it's a headphones you wear on a pregnant belly. Thought that was kind of interesting and unique. What do you think?
That's definitely on the fringe of wearables. I like it. I think that's kind of a neat thing to integrate with technology and something you wear. Since you mentioned an unusual wearable, I want to mention one of my favorites that I'd love to have but can't justify the money on. It's called a Northpaw. The Northpaw is a device that goes around your ankle and it's got 8 vibrating motors. The direction you're facing corresponds to the motor which vibrates, so you get another sense about which way north is.
I think that's real interesting. And I remember the link somebody just recently sent me. They have now a version of that device that uses piercing as affixed to the body itself, right?
Right, that's by Cyborg's Nest. I think it's a company started up by some very big names. Steve Hayworth, the designer of the magnet that's in my left ring finger. Neil Harbison, the first internationally recognized cyborg. He's achromatic, he doesn't see color, and he's got this device, a camera that hangs out in front of his head that's affixed to his skull and transmits a tone to his ears through bone conduction that allows him to see color. Moon Ribas, she's on that team as well.
Interesting. It's an interesting piece of technology. I think you'll agree with me. I think the price tag on it is excessive, and I would probably consider this device. I'd go more if it was implantable, but I would probably consider this device if it wasn't so expensive, because I know how much hardware is in there. It's not much.
Yeah.
And it seems like they're taking advantage of.
They're taking advantage of how unique it is.
Yeah.
As an electronic engineer, I can tell you that the hardware in there is pretty minimal. It's got a microcontroller, it's got an IMU, and the thing that makes it really special is that it mounts to your body through piercings, 2 bent barbells that I think they intended to mount above the breastplate. So it kind of sits under your clothes, it sits between the pectorals, and its operation is based on when you face north, it vibrates a little. From my own experience with chest piercings, I had a bent barbell right under my left collarbone, and the skin there was so active it never healed properly.
I've heard that from other people too. I used to do piercings actually for a while, and that was a big concern with that, because the collar of your shirt's always rubbed.
Yeah, it would catch on anything, and every little bump and jar would cause it to reopen and just never healed. It looked awesome. I really missed it because the intention I was kind of going for was the pips on Star Trek lapels to designate rank.
And it's fun.
And so this mounts similarly to that. If it were implantable, like you said, yeah, I'd be all over this. I wouldn't care how much it cost because I have an abysmal sense of direction.
And I would definitely get anything like that was implanted. But I think the challenge with the implanted stuff versus wearables, the main challenge is getting power to it, because the battery itself is large. We do have the ability to do inductive charging now, so we can charge through the skin. But I think there's some challenges there before we can have a lot of this stuff be implantable.
Well, if anyone will figure it out, it'll be that team. I look forward to it. I hope this is a stepping stone on their way to making something even more integrated, because Steve Hayworth designs things that do get implanted in the body, like his silicone shapes. And if he had the technology with the charging, he could easily make that device implantable. It's a little bulbous to be under the skin, but if it were flattened, yeah, I don't see why it couldn't be.
There's another one here I'm looking at, and I wanted this when I first heard about it, and I never got around to getting it. It's called the I'm gonna mispronounce this, but it's a Leachel shoe. And what they are, it's a pair of shoes or inserts into shoes that use Bluetooth to attach to your phone and actually give you navigation instructions. So as you're walking down the road, if you need to turn right, the right shoe will buzz. You'll feel the vibration there. I thought that was one of the most innovative things I'd ever heard of.
That is super clever. Like, talk about a way to be able to walk around town and look exactly like you always know where you're going.
Now, something like that can also be used for directional sensing, I would imagine, with a pretty small modification.
Oh, certainly.
As we're going through this, I'm looking at, I think I sent you this link, the Vandrico site, and I'm going to tell anybody who's listening, it's vandrico.com, and it's all about wearables, and there's some really amazing stuff you'll find here.
So we've got a pretty good idea of some of the extents of wearables, from the super common watch, the smartwatch, to Google Glass, which I don't think we need to explain too much about, and then some of the oddballs, like the pregnant lady headphones, the direction sensing stuff. Why don't we make more of these implantable?
I think we touched on one piece of it. It's the charging. Any kind of technology is going to need power of some sort, and to get power under the skin is difficult. To get a long-term power source under the skin is even more difficult. So until we really iron out that, then we're going to have trouble.
So technologically, we're limited by what we can do with power. Do you think if implantable power was not the problem, if it was just a matter of putting the correct tech under your skin, do you think more people would go for it?
No. It's a special class of person that chooses to get something implanted. Not good or bad in any way, but only certain people will take that step, which I know you and I are both part of.
I can't help but think about this episode of Futurama where they get the iPhone, but it's EYE phone. So when people go to buy this device, they actually have this device implanted kind of around their eyeball. And in the future, that seems like just the thing to do. It's just the way you wear your phone.
Well, let's bring up some more of these cool wearables that are here. Now, here's one that's interesting, Brian. It's the XSense MVN. And the XSense, it's a family of full-body wearable motion capture devices aimed at professional animators. So the human actors wear these, and it captures their movements so that they can translate that into animated characters. But I'm thinking that would be an interesting piece to use for fitness tracking, home automation even, where you could do gestures, your body, your home or your automation systems will know in what orientation you are, what position your body is in, and how it's moving.
Well, it'd be kind of like having a Microsoft Kinect pointed at you all the time. So it's like kind of the pedometer, but really, really increased or juiced up.
Yeah, and speaking of the pedometer, some of one of the main uses for a lot of the wearable is the fitness. And there's things I think that most people don't even realize are out there. There are pieces of clothing that count how many contractions of a muscle you're doing and even monitor the levels of chemicals in your sweat to tell how hard you're exerting yourself.
That's really fascinating. I mean, that really starts to touch on the things that can be used to improve humans. I mean, if I had a shirt that, said, okay, yeah, Brian, you really need to work on your arm muscles or your leg muscles or just do something aerobic, or something that would say, yeah, you're not getting enough oxygen, you need to take deeper breaths or just walk around the building once because you've been sitting still all day.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Another wearable that I can't find the details on I've seen is kind of the other direction. So it's a wearable designed for people in sporting events, so a football player that receives the impact from the people around him and then can transmit that to the people who are watching the sports event so that they can actually feel something when that athlete is struck on the field.
That's really cool. 30 years ago, that would have been called telepathy. Being able to integrate, more perceptions into virtual reality is just going to, I predict that's going to explode, with virtual reality becoming more and more popular and being like a Christmas gift. That kind of impact or feedback is going to become more and more important. I mean, if you're playing a first-person shooter on Xbox and you get hit, you're like, oh, I got hit, bummer. If you knew you got hit in the right shoulder, that would give you an extreme edge and be way, way more immersive.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the places I play laser tag, I get feedback on the gun that says you were hit in the shoulder or in the back. And I think there might even be a few different vibrating motors, one in the gun, one in the chest piece, and one on the back piece. But to know precisely where you were hit, that would be something else.
Well, even more than knowing it, you would feel it in some ways. I mean, you're not feeling the impact of a bullet or of another person crashing into you to tackle you. But you are feeling something. And combined with the virtual reality, it makes, like you said, for a more immersive experience.
And it's instantly intuitive.
Let's talk about virtual reality, because I'm excited for virtual reality. I'm more excited for augmented reality than I am virtual.
Mm-hmm.
But the virtual reality is becoming real now. So I'm excited. It's still a bit high for my price range. Generally speaking, $1,000 for like the HTC Vive setup, or they're saying 3,000 for the Oculus. That's a little bit high for me, but I'm still very excited.
Yeah, that's high for me too. I would put it's finally kind of on the consumer market, which is exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that is exciting. And if you watch the videos of people who are for the first time experiencing virtual reality, and I know you've had it. We've done a workshop for Twin Cities Plus where we tried a number of different types of virtual reality, a couple of them that are still in development at the University of Minnesota here and haven't been released to the public. It is an incredible experience.
Oh, for sure. I got as soon as I heard about Google Cardboard, I went and got the materials to make that because it's so neat to just have a viewer like that. Even though that's just visual, it's only visual. It's only like 17 degrees. Uh, it's something else to be able to turn your head and see the display change, and to instead of just being like I turn to the right and see what's on my right, to just move your head and see what's on your right. It's so cool.
What I'm really excited for is the augmented reality. Microsoft has a product coming out. What is it called, Brian?
HoloLens.
And in the first iterations of it, it just didn't have the field of view that you'd want. I think it was 17 degrees, and you'd want to go at least 25 or 50 even. But it's really an incredible idea to be able to overlay digital imagery on top of the real world.
They're certainly not the first. I think iClops with Steve Mann had been doing that for a while. But I think Microsoft is going to do a great job with it. I think it's going to be a powerful tool, and it's not just going to be for games, which is what's got me excited. I'm not a huge gamer. I'm not a gamer, but the idea of that augmented reality, like you said, that's exciting. One of the few games I have on my phone is Ingress, and it's very fun, and it's augmented reality. I'm looking forward to Pokemon Go, which is supposed to come out soon. It'll get me out of my house. It'll get me moving around and lurking through the tall grass.
Now, if that were an augmented reality device where I could actually see those images in my field of view as I'm looking around, that might change things. So one thing we didn't touch on is the wearables for the pet industry. Anything from location to fitness monitoring, there's a lot out there. There's one I'm looking at now called the Fit Bark Tracker, which is an activity monitor designed for dogs. Forgive me for laughing.
No, I just wasn't laughing into my microphone.
Yeah, now we're to fitness tracking for our animals.
I think some people need it displayed on their phone, or your dog's going to get fat.
So I think that's a good place to wrap it up, Brian.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Please join us for episode 6, where we'll discuss how to get a new sensor too. This is Brian McAvoy.
And this is Tim Shank. You have been listening to Two Cyborgs and a Microphone, brought to you by Twin Cities Plus, creating an intelligent, capable, and resilient community. Yeah, that's not AI music, Brian. You should leave that in.
No, it's semi-intelligent.